So you're all ready for a little sail on the Thames then, Martin?
Indeed. Yeah.
Good.
A beautiful, beautiful day.
If you want to get a short length of soft rope around, because there's no rails, if you notice on this, so if you tie yourself onto one of these things, you can brace against the rope, and then you can work fairly free.
Martin, what is so special about this boat?
She is old. She is all wood. She's old-fashioned. She's rigged as original. Everything is original. She's been well maintained over many years, well maintained, but in a kind of a non-expensive way. She has not been tarted up. She has been looked after and respected as a sailing boat. She spent many years on the River Orwell, and she was owned by a family there called the Humbeys, and he bought it in 1955 as part of his honeymoon, and then sailed it back to the Orwell, and then they used it as a cruising boat for 49 years, I think they had it for. Then it was sold on to somebody at the Wolverston Marina, who was a harbour master there, and he had it for 2 years, and then he advertised it for sale, and I bought it in 2004. But it was, forward that's where the cooking was, and the toilet facilities, etc. were there, and it was designed for a man, husband and wife and family, and they had the guy who did all the work, well, the crewman who did all the work, the cooking and everything else.
So that would have been the crew quarters?
Exactly.
And would the galley have been down there? Or
yes, the galley would have been in here, and through there, but along with the toilet facilities and everything else.
And he would have come in and out via the hatch, I'd imagine.
Exactly. You'd have to be more agile than me, I would say, to do that.
And me. So he stayed away from there was a division, wasn't there, between the crew and the master?
Exactly. So I think it was, we're talking 1910s,
yes,
and we're talking French and France. So that was what boats were built like at that time.
Now you're moored up at the Greenwich Yacht Club on the River Thames.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, Greenwich Yacht Club is a fine yacht club, in my view massively underused, which is in London. I'm London based, and it was a relief to be able to take my boat from Brightlingsea to here so I could actually work on it. And there are fantastic facilities here, a slipway to take your boat out, take the mast in, put it under cover, and I did all my deck repairs in the yard here. So it's a very, very good club with fantastic facilities for this, well, for any kind of boat really. But its drawback is it's 12 hours from Northumberland, 12 hours south from Northumberland, so it's two tides. So people who want to go sailing, it's an extra 12 hours they've got to make before they get out sailing, or 6 hours down to Canvey Island or Southend. But I don't mind that because I quite like the River Thames sailing. It's got its own challenges.
So what's it like sailing on the Thames?
I'm a Londoner, so I'm interested in what I see. So the sailing on the Thames is, apart from keeping your eye on the navigation and the ships coming in and out, it's identifying where you are. That's barking, that's river roading, that's the entrance to the swale, etc., etc. That's mucking flats or whatever, and then there's old buildings, and so it's familiarising yourself with this estuary, which has been used for centuries for sailing, and it's really reliving that in many ways. The aspiration of, can you master the navigation of the Thames, and can you go sailing, and do you get a thrill out of it? I do.
She's a big boat, Martin. Is that what you were after when you bought her? Did you want a big boat?
I don't know the answer to that. Did I want a big boat? I wanted a boat that was bigger than what I was used to, which was boats of 20 foot long. And I also wanted a boat that I could cruise in relatively comfortably, and you could sleep people. So yes, you have to have a bigger boat for that kind of thing.
Do you feel privileged to be able to sail on the Thames?
Yeah, absolutely. But I feel privileged to sail anywhere, really. And I love the fact that the sailing still is a slightly deregulated, it's getting worse, activity. It is getting worse, but nevertheless most of that stuff is sensible. But I like the fact that it's deregulated. She was built in Bordeaux and a yard called Bordeaux Bastide. A company at the time called Allard Gors Fils by Gors and Sons. There's no record of a designer, but I think he made a number of boats of a similar style at that time. I fancy that this was all made for the new emerging wine trade people on the Gironde. The Gironde is not a happy sailing ground, really. It's quite a tricky river, and I've often wondered where did they do their sailing. So he may have been building boats for export, i.e. selling them on. But the earliest known history, apart from that, is in 1938, when young men were sailing this boats, and they'd gone to France for a holiday, and they were based in England. They were based in Beaulieu, near the Isle of Wight and all that. They were there in September as war broke out, and of course, being young men, they just said, we gotta go. So they went back to join up. But they were kind of like who they were. They were young men of fairly wealthy means who had links to the royal family and things of that nature. It's sort of like the Middletons was one of the connections with one of the guys who were crewing it. There were 5 crew. The youngest was 14, and he sent me a record of the boat at that time because he saw it photographed when I participated in the Frostbite race. I don't know, I think 2005 or something like that, and then he communicated through Classic Boat with me. So I've got his logbook and his photographs, and it's very nice. It's quite old. And then afterwards, it was owned by another war heroes. Extraordinary, really, when I think about it, because people at that time would be war heroes, wouldn't they? And they were contacted me recently. Their family did. One of the women the crew was a Légion d'honneur. She was awarded the prize. She was in the resistance, basically. And the other guy was a DFSO, and lots of medals. Anyway, they sailed it for 4 or 5 years, and then it appeared in the one of the local papers, a boat rescued at sea off St Catherine's sinking. So this was Gwenole being rescued, and one of the aspects of Gwenole, the way she was built, she had iron floors, and these iron floors were all beginning to disintegrate, and she was constantly leaking. But they're all gone now. They've all been replaced. That was done by as I mentioned before, the Humvees. In terms of her size, she's 11 metres 7, but with the bowsprit she's 15 plus metres. She's not very wide. She's 3 metres wide effectively, and she's 1.5 deep, so she's not very deep either. She sails very well. She's surprisingly keen, particularly on certain points of sailing. She's not so good downwind, but she's very good on a reach and just off the wind, so that my competing classic boats get rather irritated by me as I sail past them. And one of my mates took a photograph and it said, "Oh, we're in the lead and we're also towing a dinghy."
So you wouldn't moor her anywhere else then?
Well, while I still have her, she will be here because the facilities are fantastic, and that's where I am. I'm based in London, so this is where I am. I'm a Londoner.
And of course, you've just given me a little reminder that she actually is up for sale, isn't she?
She is indeed.
Now, what's brought this about?
Well, I think it's my man of certain age. That other things that are in our family life that need attention, and this boat does take a lot of time, whether you're maintaining it or sailing it, and it's time to pass her on. I've had her for coming 15 years, and I didn't buy it as a young man. I bought it as an old man. But if I bought it as a young man, I would have had it for 50 years or something. So I wouldn't have sold her. But it's just that time. The time is now.
So what is it that somebody else is going to fall in love with about this boat?
Well, they have to have an aspiration for being an old boat. They must have an aspiration of being able to look after her and maintain her. They should be keen sailors, because this boat goes. Given the opportunity, she goes. And she's entirely different to the thousands upon thousands of plastic boats that are out there in the marinas. And she always lifts people's heads. Oh, look at that boat. Oh.
It's going to be a wrench, isn't it, when you let her go?
Yeah, I miss her. But I've got other passions. And so I will be focusing on those. And I'll still go sailing with my friends here. I'll become a crew. And I've still got a little old Brighton C1 design boat, so I do some local sailing, and I take my grandchildren out sailing in safer. I think that this boat's a bit too challenging for us. So, I will miss her. I will be curious about what happens to her and where she is. I'll be finding out all the time, but it's time to go.